Hi guys, welcome back to Module 6. Module 6 is all about providing consistent quality, whether it is worms or worm castings or whatever services you're offering. Consistency is very important. Have you ever purchased an item, you're trying it for the first time, and you're so impressed with the item, and so you decide you're going to try it again, but then when you get the item for the second time, it's not the same quality as before. And you feel disappointed because you were looking to the quality that you had when you had your first sample. What about if you try the product for the first time and it is so good, and you decide, yes, I'm going to try this again. I definitely want this product. And so you try it the second time and it is the same result. And so you try this the third time and it is the same result. And so guess what? Before you know it, you are just sticking to that brand because you know that every time you get that product, you're going to be satisfied. Now that is the importance of being consistent. That is the importance of offering consistent quality because it builds customer loyalty, which is what you need in order to grow your business. And yes, as I mentioned several times in this course, because of the nature of what you are providing, if you're just providing things like worms and worm castings, especially worms, your clients may only need to purchase worms from you once. But then when you offer really good value to your clients, then they're going to want to either refer you if they don't need your services anymore, or they may try to find other ways to do business with you, especially if you're offering them other value outside of just providing them with worms. And so the lesson that we're going to be looking at today is providing consistent quality when selling to worm farmers. So what you want to do is identify whether you're going to be selling to persons who are raising worms for personal use or those who are going to be selling their worms. So they're purchasing for commercial purposes. And one way that you can identify such ones is that those who are purchasing for personal use tend to buy anything up to a pound of worm. Occasionally you may have some who will buy more than a pound of worms. But those who are thinking of doing it commercially tend to buy more than a pound. They tend to buy in bulk. And sometimes these ones may buy even more than one types of composting worms. So that is how you can identify those who are doing it commercially. Now, mark you, sometimes there are those who want to do it commercially and they will only buy a pound of worm because they want to test the market, as it were, to see how well they do at raising worms and to see if it is worth it to do it as a business. So they may buy a pound of worm, but in general, those who want to do it commercially tend to buy it in bulk. So here's a question that you need to ask yourself. Are you going to be selling mixed worms, or you're going to be selling a consistent size? Now, mixed worms can fall under two categories. It can be where you are selling a mix of two different types of worms or several types of worms together. So you'd have red regular blue worms or European night crawlers in one package. Or maybe you're just selling pure red regulars, pure Indiana blue, or whatever type of worm it is that you're selling. Mixed worm can also mean mixed in terms of one type of worm but different size worms. So for example, you may sell a pound of worm that include hatchlings, juveniles, and adult worms. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to everything that we do in life. And the advantage of selling mixed worms is that you don't necessarily have to create breeder bin for them. All of your worms can grow together because you're just taking out worms. It doesn't matter what size they are because you're selling a mixed size. The disadvantage of it though is that usually a pound of mature worms, or mature red wigglers, is roughly around 1,000 worms, whereas a pound of mixed worms can be up to 1,500 red wigglers because you're selling various sizes. Which means that if you're going to be selling mixed worms, then you are going to be selling 1,500 worms as opposed to 1,000 worms for the same price. And that also may affect your production rate, because for every, whatever, say you're selling your worms for X dollars a pound, for every pound that you sell in mixed worms, you could be giving away up to 500 extra worms because you're selling them mixed. Whereas if you sell mature adult worms, it would only be 1,000, roughly 1,000 worms that you will be selling at a time. So then you need to consider, are you going to be selling them mixed, or are you going to be selling them with consistent size? And one of the things that you need to consider as well is, especially if you're just starting out, what is the rate of production of your worms? If they are reproducing fast, then maybe you can keep up with selling mixed worms. If they are producing slowly, then you don't want to be giving your clients 1,500 worms, whereas you could give them 1,000 mature worms and you have the extra 500 to keep growing and reproducing and helping to grow your population. But the choice is up to you how you're going to be selling. There's no right or wrong whether you're selling mixed or you're selling consistent size. Now for consistency, for consistent size, like I said before, it is roughly 1,000 red wigglers, mature red wigglers, that would make a pound. How can you keep the size consistent? This is where breeder bin comes in, because you don't want to spend the time to be sifting through your worms to find the larger ones, because that can be quite time consuming. And whatever we're doing, we don't want to spend a lot of time doing things that are not necessary when it could be used for something else. So then you're going to use breeder bin if you're going to be selling consistent size worms, because then you can control the size of your worms. And after you start raising your worms in breeder bin, then you're going to move those cocoons that are laid in the breeder bin to your grow out bins, and that is how you're going to raise them to keep the size consistent. Okay, so this brings us to the end of lesson 1 of module 6, and so hope you're going to spend the time and do the assignments. It's a brief one, but make sure that you get your assignments done, because this is going to help you to make decision as to how you want to organize your worms in terms of who you're selling to and what type, what size you're going to be selling. So spend the time and do the assignments, and I'll see you in the next module.